Hey everyone, my name is Catherine Roses and I'm the Director of Sales for Gig Werks. Today we're going to discuss extending process automation across the enterprise through SharePoint and other line of business systems using Nintex. A little bit about Gig Werks. I won't read the slide at you. Gig Werks has worked within the SharePoint ecosystem for almost 20 years. We've won a number of awards and have worked closely with Nintex for almost a decade. Gig Werks is a Microsoft Gold partner. We work very closely with the New York City Microsoft Enterprise Group and our Nintex virtual technology evangelists. And we have a wide variety of customers in financial services, AEC, pharma, and legal. So today we're going to focus on modernizing the enterprise as you move to SharePoint 2016, 2019, and Office 365. A lot of the customizations previously built, specifically WSPs, will not scale or work as you migrate. There are a number of approaches to prepare for this move as you modernize the enterprise, such as the SharePoint app model, which is API-driven, allows you to build discrete applications, or use off-the-shelf products like Nintex to help the enterprise scale for the foreseeable future. This approach to using Nintex or building modern apps allow you to focus on end-user experience, eliminate capital expenditures, and easily scale into the future. The SharePoint app model and Nintex support the agile methodology of development to quickly satisfy your use case, deliver to the enterprise, and manage to budget. So traditionally, enterprises have used one-off solutions, a lot of code with heavy reliance on IT, which prolongs releases to the business. The modern app model increases value, focusing on the user experience and provides reuse and extensions of solutions. Some disadvantage of WSPs and legacy customizations, there's technology limitations, difficult to scale, and significant overhead to cataloging and documenting this inventory. A few other disadvantages are there is significant risk, so difficult to remove from your environment and affect the deployment to SharePoint. And they don't work in the cloud or in hybrid environments. So you need to modernize and automate processes. There's an enormous amount of ROI we can share with you as to what intelligent process automation means. And with this modernization, how you can drive efficiency, accuracy, builds for the cloud, will work on-premise, scalable, and reduces risk. So you have a choice to build your own apps or use a modern tool set like Nintex to intelligently automate processes connecting the enterprise. Using one tool, you can automate a variety of processes connecting different line of business systems, which bring together and drive together a host of platforms outside the Microsoft ecosystem. This is creating a seamless and repeatable connection. So Nintex offers a number of products to drive this modernization. And a little bit more about Nintex, founded in Australia in 2006. They have over 8,000 enterprise customers in over 90 countries now, millions of automated processes, and billions of workflow executions annually. Here are some existing customers of Nintex and industries that are currently using Nintex. And one solution for all departments. Today we'll walk you through a use case for HR, but as you could see, Nintex allows you to automate across processes and departments. These are just a few use cases Nintex can satisfy. They offer a number of pre-built connectors that also allow you to deliver process automation further. And an advantage of Nintex is that it allows you to take advantage of the agile methodology. Agile development allows the enterprise to quickly satisfy the business's use case and manage to budget. It's dynamic and flexible, turning delivery into days to weeks, not months to years. And Gig Werks assists with this modernization. So with our modernization assessment, we'll review these legacy systems and processes with you, document these use cases, and align to a recommended conversion path. We'll provide a detailed project estimate to transform these systems to modern automated solutions and applications. And then the agile solution build, so intelligent process automation with modern tools such as Nintex, connecting content across the enterprise. So I'll pass things off to Jesse now to introduce himself and walk you through the demonstration.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jesse McCargill. Sharing up my screen. So I am a technical evangelist here at Nintex. Before joining the Nintex team, I was a SharePoint developer for a bunch of different companies, worked in the retail space, civil engineering, and then also utilities as well. So worked a lot with Nintex, automating a lot of different processes through a lot of different industries. So I'm really excited to hear today to share with you guys what Nintex can really do for you and the process that you guys are looking to automate. As Catherine mentioned, we're going to kind of walk through a scenario around employee onboarding, right? Onboarding an employee, leveraging Nintex workflow and forms inside of Office 365. I'll be able to walk through the forms design, the workflow design, how we leverage document generation, e-signature, things like that, all inside of a responsive form. But again, keep in mind that a lot of this can be used across any of your processes that you have in mind, right? So maybe accounts payable with invoices, fleet management, IT asset management, things like that. If you can automate the process, Nintex can certainly help and lend a hand with that. So I'm going to dive right into it. Here we have our Office 365 SharePoint list that we're collecting all that data, right? This is where we're going to be doing all this. This is our form that we're going to fill out. So I'm going to jump over to the form. Now I've already gone ahead and filled out a lot of this because you guys don't want to see me sit here and fill out a form, right? But to draw your attention to a few different things, this is a responsive form, so this is really nice in case you want to build out a form for a mobile device, a tablet, a phone, things like that. If you have workers that are out in the field or employees that just travel a lot and you still need to have them access data, enter in data into systems, and be able to build out a single view, a single form for them to access, you can do that all with Nintex Forms Designer, and it is responsive for you. So we also have inside of our forms, our rules engine as well. So in this example, our employee, Richard's going to be a full-time employee, but if he was happen to be an intern, we can always be able to display an end date, right? Because interns, we might know that they might just be working for the summer, but a full-time employee, generally you don't know when you're going to be quitting that job, right? So we're just going to go ahead and hide it because that's data that we just don't need right now as we're onboarding Richard, right? So we go ahead, fill out the rest of it, gave him a title, picked a manager that he's going to report up to. Now this is using our the user profiles right inside of SharePoint, hooking up to our Azure AD. So we're actually selecting an actual user inside of our environment, right? We're not just entering in any old email address, right? It's an actual person in our org. Then we're going to go ahead and give him some equipment, right? Laptop, phone, give him access to some software, and maybe any comments or attach his resume here, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and save this out. Go ahead and kick off that workflow as we're sitting here. But then it's always important, right? How do we do that, right? How do we peel all that back, right? And jumping into it, for our Nintex workflow and forms, it's an add-in right into SharePoint Online, right? So you go out to the SharePoint store, you add it into your environment, and automatically it shows right up here up in your ribbon, right? So it's not hidden or anything. It's easy to find. So all your business users, they can jump into it as well and start designing and developing their processes. So within our Nintex forms, we're going to click on that. I already have it open up for us here. We're going to jump right into that designer. So this is our forms designer, front and center stage. It's our responsive forms. Over on the left-hand side, we have all those controls that we can use, right? It's that drag and drop functionality. It's a no-code solution, right? So we're configuring things, we're designing things. We're not worrying about like that HTML5 to code things out, right? It's all done for us. So here, just kind of taking a look at what Nintex has to offer, right? As you're building out your forms, you have your general form controls that you want to add into it, right? So maybe you want to add in a geolocation for those folks that are out there in the field, right? They might be working on lines out there, right? You can take this control, drag it right over to your canvas and drop it right in there, right? And that's really easy to use, right? So you don't have to be very technical savvy. Your business users, even your technical users, can still be able to use this with that same degree of understanding how the tool works, right? Move it around. Last thing we want on another line, we want to build these out. We want this whole thing, right? Easy to use, right? That's where Nintex really shines through. I want to move this back. I just want to get rid of this, hit that little trash can and it's gone, right? And we can add in repeating sections, just like everything else, right? In our forms, calculated values, but also too, because we're inside of SharePoint, right? We can leverage our list lookups and our managed metadata if you're leveraging that as well. So you can pull that into your forms. Also too, because we're inside of SharePoint, any sort of that list column, any of the sort of those data points that you want to capture, you can pull those in as well. So as you're redesigning your form, you want to get rid of some things, bring them into another section. I can drag these all in, the title, drag it right back onto the canvas, and we're off to the races. It's really easy to use. So also too, right, theming, that's important, right? You want it to look like the rest of your organization. You want it to match the colors, match the logo. You can certainly do that with Nintex Forms, right? So through our themes option, you can change the different styles. So if you know what the hex value is, you can certainly add that in, or you can just use the slide bar, find that right color that you're looking for, and certainly add it in that way. The logo as well, you can import that in as well. So that way there, it's branded all the same for your organization. Now, what about rules, right? Rules are important in your forms, right? So if this happens, then this is gonna happen, right? That's very important, just like our employee type. So if we look at our rules, we have on our end date, right? We hit that end date if our employee type was not full-time, right? So that's important to do. We see here, again, we're not coding anything. We're just selecting that field. We're putting in that logical step, right? So if it's equal to full-time, we're just gonna go ahead and hide that, right? And you have that ability to maybe disable that control. We just want to invalidate it, put up a message to them, things like that. So again, it's easy to use, configuring actions, not coding things. Another great benefit to Nintex Forms and also within workflow is you have that ability to export your forms and import your forms. So this is really nice when you're working in maybe a development environment and you need to push it up to production, right? You want to get it ready for prime time and it's now ready to go. You can export your form, and as long as that list definition is the same in your production environment or wherever you're moving it to, you can just simply import that form into that list, and now you're off to the races, right? All that form definition, the validations, your rules, all that customization, it all stays intact inside of that form definition. So you're good to go, right? You don't need a third-party migration tool to do that for you. It's all built in. And then also, right, because again, in SharePoint, right, version control is always important, right? So if you want to roll back a form version, maybe you're working on it and you realize that, hey, version 3 was really the one that we wanted to go with, you can always roll that back to a specific version of that Nintex form and be able to publish that. So that's now the major published version. But sometimes you just want to reset that form, right? You just want to get rid of it, go back to what it was for Nintex out of the box. You can go ahead and reset that form. And of course, worst case scenario, right? You just want to go back to that SharePoint out of the box form. You can certainly do that as well and just go ahead and delete that form. And now you just have just that SharePoint out of the box form at your disposal. And of course, right, before you publish it, it's always good to know, what does that form look like? So you have the ability to preview your forms as you're designing them out. So you can pick your different devices that you want to look at them at, and then also what mode it in, right? Because SharePoint, you can look at it in a new mode, edit mode, and display mode. And the nice thing is all of those validations, all of your rules that you've built into your form will be reflected in that preview. So that way there you can test it before you actually go off and publish it. So that's really nice. So right now, I'm gonna switch on over to look at the back-end part of it, like that workflow piece of it. But before we jump over to there, I wanna take a second and talk about, that user experience, right? That end user experience, and about what is gonna actually have to happen, right? Because we're onboarding an employee, right? It's gotta go off for an approval. So think about maybe like an invoice approval or a document approval, document revisions, right? And you need to send it off for an approval step. Nintex gives you the ability to customize that interaction for that end user, right? And there are a bunch of different ways that you can go about doing it. Traditionally, SharePoint would allow you to click on a link, go into that workflow task list, right? Open up that form and respond to that task. And you can certainly still do that. However, Nintex gives you the ability to do what we call our lazy approval, right? And that's simply just respond to that email, right? Just reply with approved or rejected. And that's really nice for your busy users that don't want to click into SharePoint. They just want to respond to an email. But also, taking it one step further, we can also implement an actionable email message inside of that workflow, right? Inside of that task, where now all they have to do is come in here and click on a button, right? And that's really nice too, because this saves you that one extra step of having to respond to that email and understanding what you're going to reply with just click on a button, right? I think a lot of us can agree that clicking on a button is much easier, much faster. You can see I'm already done with this approval step. So moving right along, right? Again, how do we build all of this stuff, right? How do we build all that in? And the answer to that is our Nintex workflow. So again, just like in our forms, Nintex workflow, it's right up there in that ribbon. When you're ready to jump into it and design it out, you click on that and you're presented with your design canvas. So again, right in the center of the screen, that's our design canvas, front and center. Over on that left-hand side, it's all the different actions that you can add in to your workflow, right? It's all drag and drop. So as you're going through this, you want to add in, we want to execute a SQL statement. We take that action, we can drag it right into our workflow, and we can add it in and configure it from there. So Nintex workflow has a lot to offer, right, in terms of what you can do with it, right? So everything from the generic SharePoint things, right? So checking things in and out, creating list items, updating list items, things like that. But also too, we have integrations into our Nintex Hawkeye, right? Our analytics engine, if you wanted to get advanced analytics out of your workflows. Also, integrations with Adobe Sign, Box, Dropbox, DocuSign. Also too, you have the ability to call web services, right? So if you have a system that you need to connect to that we don't have a connector for, but it does have an API layer, you can certainly construct a web service call to connect to that system and pass data back and forth between your workflow and the system that you're trying to interact with. So that's really powerful as well. On top of that, right, your logic and flow, right? So the ability to do conditional branches, run things in parallel, run ifs, things like that. But one thing that Nintex can do that something like SharePoint Designer would not be able to do is something that we have is a state machine. So for those that are unfamiliar with state machines, it allows you to build out different logical branches of complex logic that you have inside of your workflow that you can then call from that state machine at any point in time. An example of this is what we have here inside of our employee onboarding, right? As you see through here, we're stepping through our employee onboarding. It's going to go off to our manager and then our payroll and then VP. The same thing could happen for maybe like a fleet management system, right? Where you're checking out a fleet vehicle, checking to see if it's in use or if it's not in use, updating the right systems of record, making sure that the scheduled times are available and things like that, right? Where you might want to be able to bounce those around. And approvals, we do the same thing. So for our manager approval, it goes off to payroll. Payroll, if they have questions, they can actually pass it back to our manager, and then they can provide additional information about that step in that process, and then continue back on normally as it would flow through. Same thing with our HR. They can pass it back if they needed to, and then that way the workflow continues to run and it is dynamic and fluid as the process needs to be, rather than being rigid and require you to stop, restart that process from step one. Now, again, Nintex workflow is very flexible, right? It's very intelligent enough to understand what you're trying to do with your workflows, and if you want to add on to it and extend that even further, you can. An example of this is within your state machine. So in your state machine, maybe we want to add in another branch for IT, right? So we can do that just by simply going into our state machine and adding in IT, and there it is. It appears right there for us. We don't have to go in and code anything. We don't have to go in and try to rebuild something else out. It's just a matter of configuring that actions to the things that you need it to do, right? Another really nice thing is again, there's no reason to have to rebuild everything. So we give you the ability to copy and paste entire sets of actions, right? So let's say this approval process, we want to copy this as is. So I can take that, copy it, come over to IT, paste that in, and now I have that entire structure of what that approval process was right here inside of my IT branch. So that's really nice because I don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, right? I don't have to rebuild everything from scratch. I can take basic logic, a basic skeleton of what I'm trying to do, and add that right in and copy and paste that. So I'm going to go ahead and just clean this up a little bit. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to come up here to my state machine action. Go ahead. I'm going to get rid of IT, that branch, because I don't need that actually. And then that branch just goes away, right? It all gets cleaned up for me. And that's really nice. It's really powerful because it keeps it clean for me. So as our process goes through, right, in this scenario, we're onboarding Richard Rowe. And one of those steps is, well, we have to draft up an onboarding document, right? So our acceptance letter, right? So we need to draft that. So with our document generation actions inside of Nintex, we're able to pull in document templates that may be stored in a document library inside of SharePoint and be able to pull those in and then be able to inject dynamic data that we have inside of our workflow into those documents. So here we see that we have an offer letter, we have our first day requirements, right? So when they come on site on their first day, and then our follow-up, right? Our offer, anything that's in our footer that we need to add in, right? And you'll notice that on our first day requirements, we have based on condition. And this is really important because Richard Rowe, he actually lives in Pennsylvania. So those requirements are different than somebody that's being onboarded in, say, let's say Washington State or Texas. So we're going to inject specific data or specific documentation into this document as we are going through it. And this is really important because let's say you're doing something with like marketing, you have terms and conditions. They may be different based on something that's going on in your workflow or certain legal agreements, right? So you can change that up based on what is going on inside of your workflow, based on logic that you can define out. And of course, we're just going to save it off to our SharePoint environment once we've gone ahead and crafted this document, and we're going to send it off for an e-signature, right? So actually taking a look at what that document looks like here, I'm just going to go ahead and open that up. We'll drag this over here. Now we can see that. Here we have our nice document, right? We have our Richard Rowe. He's a manager. All this information is what we captured on that form, right? And we injected that into this document. We also see that because he was in Pennsylvania, right, we have this little extra blurb of what he needs to do. And then using DocuSign, we're just asking him for an e-signature, right? So here, Richard Rowe is going to go ahead and sign off on this. We're going to go ahead and sign and apply. And that's how easy it is, right? So we're already integrated with Adobe Sign, also DocuSign as well, right? So we can add those in if we wanted to. And we're just leveraging that just like any other workflow action that we have, right? So our Adobe Sign action. And then, like I said, we also have our DocuSign actions as well that you can use if you wanted to leverage those as well. So with that, that's kind of a high-level overview of everything that Nintex Forms and Workflows has to offer, walking through an employee onboarding process. But again, keep in mind that you can leverage Nintex Workflow and Forms for all kinds of different processes, everything from maybe a SharePoint project site request form to IT asset management, things like that. So if you can automate it, Nintex can certainly help in that regard as well. So with that, I'll pass it back to you guys, and if you guys can close it up.
I do want to thank you, Jesse, and you, Catherine, both for a great presentation, and everybody for coming out today. We'll send out the recording, hopefully end of this week, early next week, and look forward to having you guys next time. Thank you, everybody.